the actors didn't have night vision systems.
They just got God.
They had
They got prop goggles.
So they were wandering around in complete darkness.
Roger's enough of a rock star that Roger gets recognized.
The grey hair.
But I've learned that I can't take it for granted that people know Roger's credits, so I'm going to read off some of them. The Shawshank Redemption, Dead Man Walking, Fargo, Kundun, The Big Lebowski, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, The Man Who Wasn't There, A Beautiful Mind, Jarhead, No Country for Old Men, In the Valley of Ella, Doubt, The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, A Serious Man, Skyfall, True Grit, Prisoners, also with Denis Villeneuve, and Unbroken for Angelina Jolie. And then you have upcoming the Blade Runner sequel, we hope.
Yes, that we cannot mention, yes.
It's on IMDb.
No, I know that.
And you're working now with the Coen brothers again on Hail Caesar.
We're just doing a few little pickups for Hail Caesar at the weekend, and that'll be finished, yeah.
And you have another Angelina Jolie project, we hope.
Kind of I did, but that fell through a few months ago.
You think it'll come back?
Well, you should ask Angie about that. I really don't know.
I don't have her on my speed dial.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes films have their moment and then it passes. Like there was a film the brothers was going to do, To the White Sea, and I always thought that was going to come back, but that we scouted it and everything, and it just died. And yeah, it had its moment, and maybe somebody will make it, but yeah.
This one has been described as having a cruel landscape. Cruel, which is sort of an interesting word to apply to a landscape.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. Cruel. I don't.
You don't feel that way?
No, I think it's got a wonderful landscape. I mean, it's a fascinating landscape. I've shot in New Mexico quite a lot of times, and yeah, it's a wonderful place to shoot, a wonderful landscape to shoot. Cruel, I don't know. It's like No Country for Old Men. That's that Tommy Lee Jones's line about the hard cliche. It's the hard country, but it's also quite beautiful.
Well, this sort of takes that sort of Tommy Lee Jones, no country for old men thing to the next level. It's a land of wolves now. This is a movie about a very, very harsh reality that Kate is being introduced to. How do you express that visually?
It's funny, you mentioned the other films that we were talking. I mean, Assassination of Jesse James, for instance. When I first read this, I thought it was like the end of a sort of series of films that I've been lucky enough to work on that are mainly westerns, like Jesse James and True Grit, obviously, but yeah, Valley of No Country, and it's coming up to the present, and this is the way it is now, kind of thing. So that was my sort of take on it, really, I suppose.
Well, you have done a lot of westerns, and there probably aren't that many people around today who can actually say that.
No, it's sad, isn't it? Yeah, they're not. That's so fashionable, I suppose.
Is there something different for you about approaching something that's set in the West or that is an actual period Western?
I mean, I think that depends very much on the director and the script. I mean, like the Assassination of Jesse James was very much a sort of a kind of tone poem, and to some extent, No Country was, but a much darker one. Whereas this is a much more linear narrative. It has a very strong drive, and not the whole point of the film, but the cinematography and the way that the film's put together is keeping that momentum going. It never lets you off the hook. It's that kind of film. So that's quite different than No Country, because No Country kind of goes off in tangents all the time and kind of metaphysical conversations or something, you know what I mean? But it's a different kind of filmmaking.
I heard a stage director once talk about how at different moments in a play, different things can be the hero. Sometimes it's the acting, sometimes it's the sound, sometimes it's the lighting. And in the film where you have editing, you have cinematography, there are yet more things that can be the hero. When you worked through this script with Denny, were there moments where he said, I want you to carry the storytelling at this moment, or will you agree that at this moment this is going to be something we're going to do with photography and not with dialogue, not with music?
Yeah, I mean, I love working with Denny because you start off having just a general discussion about the script, and we did this on Prisoners, and you go through the script and yeah, actually, you know, think about places where you could maybe lose the dialogue and do the same thing visually. Yeah, I'm not trying to think of an example, but I know that's the kind of approach we had to it. Yeah, but you know, yeah, I mean, film is a visual medium. I mean, obviously, dialogue's important, but sometimes it's really easy to get something across with a visual rather than actually having somebody explain it.
There's that line from Hitchcock that in a movie, anytime someone has to actually say something, someone hasn't done their job.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's certainly a number of films that have been made that don't have any dialogue in them, yeah.
By the way, we are going to take questions from the audience at the end, so if you have questions, get them ready. We'll probably do 10 or 15 minutes of that. We'll see how much stamina you have and we have. Let's talk about some of the specific things in this film. One of the more startling things that this film has is that night vision sequence. We actually have two different kinds of night vision. Tell us how you came to that.
Well, the problem with that sequence was, you know, I mean, you look at not just the tunnel, but the whole extension of the tunnel. So it was all a piece where they get out of the SUV, they go down the hill, they go into the tunnel. At the beginning, the tunnel's dark. I mean, in our research, really, we found that they only really have lights on in the tunnels on the Mexican side, strangely. But they do have this wonderful, you know, justification for a lot of light in the tunnel, you know, bare bulbs and that's what they do. So there's this whole sequence you have in your mind about what that should look like and transition from one to the other. And it's like when they go down the hill in the sunset into the blackness and they disappear, the silhouettes disappear into that black. So then you're saying it's black, and they have to put on this vision systems in order to see. So you can't really do, you know, a Hollywood moonlight. It doesn't make sense. I was agonizing about that, and then he saw I was troubled, I think. And we had I said, I can't get my head around this. How can we do objective shots when it's meant to be pitch black? And then we want to see night, you know, see through their night vision as well. And he said, well, if there's something else we can do, we could play it maybe all in their point of view, in somebody's point of view. So that's when we thought, well, let's do it with infrared and night vision. So we actually use the infrared as Alejandro's point of view. He's the only one with infrared system. Some people don't quite get that, but it's established as they get out of the SUV. And so I think it's less confusing, but in a way, visually, it's more confusing, which is kind of interesting. And there's only one shot. We did a couple of sort of silhouette shots where they're really, really dark to give the effect that objectively it's incredibly dark. And we just did the one shot of the guy coming in the entrance of the tunnel and drawing his knife out. And that's like the only objective shot in the sequence till you get in the tunnel, and then there's lights, and then you can play what you want, you know. Yeah, we had an infrared camera from this company called FLIR. It's a scientific camera. I mean, we could rent it out, but they let us have it for free for a few days. Yeah, we tested it. We played around with it, and at one point I got the prop guy to put his boots on a heater, so when he walked on the floor, he left these hot footprints on the ground. And I realized you could follow the footprints. I went to Denny and said, it'd be great if we follow the footprints. And you could watch them dissolve if you held them long enough. It was a really cool image.
Yes, it's something I've never seen. It's really done creatively in this film too. You know, with the night vision, are you actually able to light for night vision?
Well, the thing is, it's hard for the actors and actually the Steadicam operator, Bella True, because actually Bella can see his monitor because he's got the image, but the actors didn't have night vision systems.
They just got goggles.
They had prop
goggles.
So they were wandering around in complete darkness. I can see on the DOT monitor, I can see what Bella's got on his Steadicam, so we had a chance. But it was actually where our location was so dark and it was so sort of murky that I did actually light it, but I had a 12 by 12 bounce on a 60-foot crane with a tiny little 1K onto it. I mean, anybody knows what 1K is, it's like nothing. And it was like, 150 feet or 200 feet away from the subject. So it was the funniest thing, the film shoot with this big bounce, this tiny little light doing a whole night shoot. But it gave it that little bit of edge to the lighting and a little bit of contrast, a bit more snap than it would have been if it hadn't been lit at all,
I said you can actually do creative lighting for night vision.
Well, you can, but if you light it too much, you could put a lot of light on it and it light it up, but then all that sort of nice little white dots and all that kind of grain, the noise disappears and you get too clean an image. And then he was very, he really wanted it to be a distressed image. So we shot virtually wide open, but just gave it that little bit of edge.
Now you started shooting documentaries and music videos when it was film. You might have even caught the end of the Technicolor era.
Hey, I'm not that old.
Well, they didn't
shoot Technicolor.
You never shot Technicolor.
I mean, The Godfather was printed Technicolor. There was a confusion about shooting Technicolor 3-strip and printing 3-strip.
Now it's digital cameras, and you've been your own operator all the time, correct?
Yeah, because I started in documentaries, I can't really give it up. And I think it's the best job on the set operating, because you're the closest to the actors, you're closest to what's going on, and completely in touch with what the camera's doing. I could never get used to having somebody else. I mean, I say that, but Bella was doing the Steadicam, I'm not doing Steadicam. It's a very specialist thing, and I don't, in that situation, I work with an operator, but generally I operate, yeah.
And did you have a second unit on this as well?
Bella did some pickup shots, I believe, but only like 1 or 2 landscapes. I'm not sure they're in the film actually. And then we had an aerial unit.
And talk about making sure all of that fits together and is cohesive and it feels like a whole.
Yeah, well, I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, that's the trick, I think, of cinematography, is that everybody knows, you're shooting out of order. You shoot shots in a certain sequence out of order, like the opening, the opening and the bashing in the SWAT house and everything. Well, that's a combination of 2 different days shooting on a location that was like 4 weeks apart. The 2 days were 4 weeks apart, I think, because of the weather or something. And a set with a backing that's photographed to match the exterior location, and that's shot another, week after the, it's all piecemeal. And so it's not only within the scene, but obviously scene to scene, you're all over the place. It's a real jigsaw, and I always say, I think the hardest thing and the trick of cinematography is creating a unified whole, visually. So the audience isn't sort of taken out of the film at any point.
This film has so many looks, and yet it does feel unified. What do you feel like, from your point of view, are the things that bring it together?
Well, I think it's a style thing. I mean, it's obviously you maintain the same feel of the camera movement, and obviously for the actors as well, it's important that you maintain a continuity from one scene to another, when again, they're miles apart, but actually it's happening 5 minutes later or something. Yeah, it's just that sort of sensibility that you put to the film, really. Yeah.
You talked about it being a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Walk us through how much planning you can do in advance and how much you have to discover on the day when you're there with the actors in the place.
Personally, I don't think you can do too much planning. The extreme maybe is with the Coen brothers, that everything's storyboarded and we really go through everything really, really carefully. Not that you necessarily shoot the storyboards, but you've always done that kind of planning. I mean, we did on Sicario and Prisoners, really, because they're films where you don't really have the budget to spend it. You can't have a Technicrane sitting in the parking lot for the whole shoot. unless you're using it every day, and we certainly don't. So, you know, you bring it in for a day and let it go. I prepare, I say you storyboard certain numbers of the sequences. The shootout of the border crossing, for instance, you know, there's maybe 45 shots or something. Well, I take all those shots and sort of write it down, and then I order it. And if you're shooting like 3 different days, I'll say, well, I want that shot done at between 8 and 10 in the morning, and that shot done at like 11 o'clock. That shot can be done in the evening because the sun will be over there. That shot can be done midday when I don't like the light, or when the cloud comes over, because we're inside the car and nobody's going to notice the light's changed. So you do all this kind of jigsaw of shooting order, and I sit down with the AD and work it out, and obviously relate to Denis and make sure he's comfortable with it. But yeah, it's like a battle plan. So, you know, so everything you shoot's on the screen. It's not, you're not wasting time, you know, screwing about when you're shooting.
It's funny that you talk about that, because if it's done right, if you follow that battle plan, as an audience, if someone watching the film, you don't notice. It just looks natural. But I have seen a film, I don't want to name it, so let's just call it Transformers, where there was a scene, it was the most recent one, where there's a scene, it's an action scene, and it was obviously shot at every different time of day. And just as you cut from shot to shot, it's the only time I've ever been aware of the shots really not matching. And I thought, okay, he just doesn't care. It's not he's not worrying about that.
Well, I mean, but yeah, there's sometimes you have to wear it. I mean, sometimes it's you literally don't have the money and the time to do it. I don't know, one of my favourite Scorsese films is Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. You watch the scenes between Ellen Bernstein and the kid in the car. You look at one side and it's almost dark, it's twilight. You look at the other way, it's noon. I mean, on a cross-cut, and I didn't notice that until I'd seen the film 3 times, because you're so engrossed in the story. So, you know, maybe nobody notices anyway, so why do I bother? No, I think it's really important, even subliminally, if I can pronounce that word, it really makes a difference that you know, that nothing jumps, even if you're not aware of it, that, well, you are somehow subconsciously, that jump is distracting you from the story.
And I had an editor talk to us last year at Variety about how if somebody takes you out of the movie and you stop for a moment and you have to think, wait, what? Then you're losing the thread of the story for a few seconds. Yeah. And if that happens often enough in a film, you've lost the thread altogether.
Or in the case of like a film like this, you lose the momentum. You know, because you want that pace, you want that kind of urgency all the time. You know?
I have to admit, when I saw this, I was not able to follow everything that was going on. The plot is complex, and it's very dense, and people are deceiving each other. And then you have the whole thing with the Mexican cop, which seems to be completely unrelated until it isn't. And yet at the end it all comes together. Our American ears come to understand, as Alejandro said.
Yeah, originally it was a bit more cross-cutting between different characters, actually. The character of Manuel was, you know, the swimming pool, the kid swimming was introduced earlier. And there was also a scene with Alejandro very early on in the film, which had no relationship to the rest of the movie. Then he said, you know, we did shoot this scene, and it was the only scene that we shot that's not in the film, otherwise everything's there. But he said, no, the problem was that it distracted from the film being about Kate, and you had to establish her straight away, you know.
The Rolling Stone review, which is posted outside this theater, talks about how much of the story is carried by Emily Blunt's face. And I as someone who has dabbled in photography, I know how hard it is to capture a face perfectly, so that you don't miss the great take, you don't miss the great reaction. Can you talk about that challenge from your point of view as a DP and as a camera operator?
Well, I think one of the roles of the cinematographer is, I mean, the cinematographer really runs the floor crew, you know, really, and it's their job, his or her job, to really create the space for the actor, because if you don't have a performance, you don't have a film. Mind you don't have a film, but I don't really care for, you know, action films that don't have characters in them and stuff. And you know, so that, I think that's a very important part of the job. creating that space. And then you judge it with, like Denny and I would talk about. I mean, I might have an idea of the order I'd like to do for a scene in terms of lighting, but then, he would talk to the actors, and maybe you wanted to, sometimes we shoot, I think there was one scene, I think the end scene in the kitchen, I'm pretty sure we shot Emily's close-up before we did anything else. So, you balance your approach to it depending on, how the actor's feeling if they're into the part, or maybe sometimes an actor wants to get into the part, so you'll shoot all the reactions to their performance before you'll shoot their actual, dialogue. Yeah, it's all, yeah.
Let's go to questions from the audience. I'm going to call on people, and there will be microphones going around the house. We don't have microphones? All right. Now, I'll tell you what. If you stand up and you shout out your question, I will make sure to repeat it so everybody can hear it. How's that for a plan? Okay, hands for anybody who has a question right up here in the middle.
Hey, I have a question about during some of the car scenes when it appeared that the camera was handheld, but you were going over big bumps, and I'm just wondering how you.
During the car scene, the camera appeared to be handheld, but the cars were going over bumps. How did you manage to do that?
No, it was the two different remote heads. One time we had it on a stripped down Libra head, which it becomes like a 2-axis little Libra head. When we were actually in Mexico, I'm trying to think now. The other head we have is a mini scorpion head. I think it's called a micro scorpion head, and it's about yay big. And with the Alexa on it, it's like really tiny, and it fits in the car really well. So, I mean, for years you've always had to do either hang on the outside of the car with a fluid head and operate it. Sometimes we'd build rigs on the outside of the car because I could sit out there and operate crazy shots. But now you can use remote heads, you can get the slight bit of movement with the camera. So it gives it a slight fluidity rather than a kind of lock-off feel. So it's a combination. I mean, all the bouncy stuff going faster in Mexico City was done with a Libra head, rigged in different places.
So the scene before they go into the tunnel, that whole kind of like magic hour segment where they're prepping and putting on the gear and
You're talking about the twilight before they go to the tunnel.
Was that, I mean, if you could do that in one day, that'd be amazing, but how long did that particular scene, because I mean, there's such a...
How long did that take to shoot? How many days?
What moment of time that you could shoot that particular skyline?
Yeah, we got to shoot really quickly. Yeah. We shot, as they're getting out the SUV, we shot all but 2 close-ups on the first night. I think both evenings we ended up going from there down to do the night work with a tunnel. Because the location was about a couple of miles from where we did the exterior of the tunnel. So the first night we did all but 2 close-ups. And the second night, the clouds weren't nearly the same, but we only had 2 close-ups left where they're getting out of the SUV and putting their gear together. And on that same night, we had a long track laid out to do that one where they all disappear down into the blackness, the side shot. But basically we got there on the first day with plenty of light and mapped the whole scene out. And I had the track for the long shot, another tracking shot I think I had laid out well in advance, so you just sort of leapfrog from one shot to another. But this is the sort of thing you really got to, you really got to prep to get it. I mean, the same thing would happen when they go on the rooftop to watch the gunfire in Juarez. I mean, we didn't do that in one night, in one evening. I mean, we couldn't do all those shots. We did all but one of them, but
Quick show of hands from the audience. How many people here do not know what a digital intermediate is? That's fewer than I expected. So for people who do not know what that is, I'm going to summarize it as Photoshop for movies. Is that a fair one-line description of what digital intermediate is?
It is really, yeah.
So with something like that, where you're trying to match shots from a single scene from two different twilights, two different evenings, two different sunsets, how much does then DI come into play to match those shots up?
Well, it definitely helps, I won't lie, it definitely helps. I mean, yeah, it gives you more flexibility than if you were just doing film finish, but also shooting on digital capture gives you that little bit more flexibility than if you shot on negative, you know, so yeah, each gives you that little bit of advantage, a little bit of more latitude, and, yeah, a little bit more, you can bring things up and knock things down.
When I started covering this stuff 10 years ago, the word that we would get was, well, shooting digital was cheaper, but it would slow you down because you had to light more carefully because the cameras didn't have the same latitude as film. And now that seems to have completely flipped, where the cameras are very
I
forgiving.
don't like the way you said light more carefully. I don't think I light less carefully or shoot less carefully. I can just shoot like a little bit longer. And I can sleep at night because I don't have to wait for the lab report in the morning. I know what I've got, you know? Which is actually the most important thing. I think that's why I shoot digital. There's no other reason. It's just to sleep practice.
Just one less thing to stress about. And you can, but those cameras really do give you more latitude.
Well, I mean, yeah, they give you more latitude, but the camera, I shoot on an Arri Alexa, and it's a base of 800 ASA, you know, film stock's 500, and I never push film stock like that, not high speed stock, so you've got that advantage. You know. But, you know, you go back to the DI, yeah, you can paint it quite a bit, like the two close-ups we didn't get the first night, well, there weren't the same clouds the second night, so I did cheat and paint in a little bit of cloud. There's no CG, it's kind of me doing it. I mean, I know a lot of people would just, you know, CG the background, what the hell. But, you know, this wasn't that kind of film, there wasn't kind of budget, you know. And frankly, I think the more you can do in camera, the better, because even CG is fantastic, but there's something about it that always kind of not quite right, you know. It's those kind of, the kind of reality, you can't get the reality, because it's all those odd things that happen on the camera that you can't create. I mean, I've worked quite a bit, sorry I'm going on now, but I worked a lot in animation, you know, and consulting on animated films. And it's really hard to create those kind of odd things that happen naturally with light and the way light hits people and the way people are in a real situation, you know.
Yeah, you don't get anything for free in animation. Everything has to be built.
Right, but just, you know, what I'm saying is just trying to imagine exactly what it's like in reality. And it's all too clean, it's all too correct somehow, you know. Reality is not that easy.
This may not be a good question, but is there any way in which you hope an audience member would leave one of your movies and look at the world differently after?
Is there any way you would hope an audience member would leave one of your movies and look at the world differently?
Well, I always say, I mean, it's got nothing to do with cinematography, but I always hope that I'm working on films that leave the audience posing, you know, trying to answer a question, thinking about a subject. I mean, this film, surely in particular, it doesn't offer any answers, and there are no answers, but then that's kind of its point. I think it relates to a lot of issues now, not just the war on drugs, but the war on terror, you know, all this kind of stuff. I mean, what are we doing, you know?